Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in my video today, we are going to be setting up a brand new frog enclosure. However, we are not just going to be setting up any frog enclosure, we are going to be setting up an absolutely incredible paludarium. This is going to be a complete enclosure build video, so you're going to see it from start to finish. You're going to see me make a background, carve it, paint it, get the plants and everything added in, and everything else that happens in between. So setting up a new enclosure in itself is always fun and exciting, but this one is going to be a little bit extra fun and exciting because we are using a whole bunch of brand new products that were just released, including a super cool brand new terrarium design. So before we get on with the video, I want to take a quick minute to thank Exo Terra for sponsoring this video and making it possible. Exo Terra recently launched a ton of new products that are a part of their frogs&co line. I really want to thank Exo Terra for sending me so many of these new products and for allowing me to be a part of this product launch. Exo Terra has been one of my favorite reptile brands since I got into the hobby years ago, so it is truly an honor to be a part of this launch. Exo Terra sent me a ton of new products to make this enclosure build possible, so let's go ahead and check out what I have. To get started, we're going to get the terrarium set up on my table. As you saw earlier, I'm using the new Exo Terra tree frog terrarium. This one here measures 18 by 18 by 24 inches. Exo Terra also came out with an 18 by 18 by 18 model, however, I wanted the taller one as it would be more beneficial for the animals that are going to live here. Now we're going to start making the background. For this one, I'm using the foam and Drylok method. You'll see the Drylok later, but for now we're going to get started with some great stuff spray foam. I chose to cover the entire back of the enclosure and a little bit of the side. Now that the foaming is done, I'll be leaving it overnight to cure. And once the foam has cured, the enclosure looks like this. So now it's time to start carving. If you want, you can carve it by just scraping off the top shiny layer, or you can go for something a little bit more detailed. I had a very specific idea of what I wanted to create, which was a mossy rock wall. So with that as my inspiration, I did my best to carve rock formations out of the foam. One downside to spray foam is that it often forms these air pockets, which can be both difficult to work with and also just ugly. However, I'm actually very happy that my background has these. They'll come in handy later on. You'll see what I mean soon. And here's what it looks like fully carved. With the background fully carved, it's now time for some Drylok. I'm a huge fan of Drylok backgrounds. I think they look incredible and they allow for a lot of creative freedom. So Drylok comes in both white and gray. Personally, I prefer using gray for backgrounds, but they were out of stock, so I went ahead and I got the white one. Now this isn't a big deal as you can easily dye the Drylok. Now let's get to painting. I will be doing 3 coats on this total. So the first 2 coats are going to be painted all the same color of gray. For the 3rd coat, I'm going to use slightly different shades and tones for the different rocks. Now that the Drylok is dry, I'm going to start painting it and adding some accents. If you're painting your background, make sure to use water-based acrylic paints, as these ones are animal safe and waterproof. As I mentioned earlier, I want to create the appearance of a mossy rock wall, so I'll be painting the background to resemble that the best I can. I used grays and black to create and define shadows. I used browns and reds to create different color rocks, white and beige to add texture, and greens to create the appearance of moss. Once the background was painted, it looked like this. Now let's talk about those air pockets in the foam that I mentioned earlier. While they look really ugly right now, I'm actually really happy that they're there. Why, you may be thinking? Well, it has to do with the moss wall. I knew from the start that I wanted to attach real moss to the background using silicone and the Exo Terra forest moss. And I wanted to ensure that the moss looked as naturally placed as possible. Sometimes when I try to make something look natural, it doesn't turn out the way I wanted to. So I decided that I would use all of the air pockets and imperfections as a guide for the moss placement. Not only will this cover up any imperfections in the background, but it will allow me to just place the moss without thinking about it and help to create an effortless, natural appearance. So that's exactly what I did next. I took some GE Silicone 1 and placed it all over the air pockets and imperfections. Once the silicone was placed, I would stick some dry forest moss to it. The moss is the final touch to the background, so now it is complete. Here's what the background looks like fully complete. I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. It took me over 10 hours to complete it, but I had so much fun during the process and the end result is so worth it. The tank is now down in my reptile room and almost ready to be placed on its stand, but before we do that, I need to get the drainage hooked up. This enclosure has a drain on the bottom, and it also comes with tubing, an elbow, and a valve to allow for easy water drainage. You'll see how this works later on. For now, I just need to get it connected. Once that was done, I went ahead and I put my tank on its stand, and then I got the Exo Terra LED light hooked up. With everything in its place, we can finally get to setting up the enclosure. To start, I'm going to place some stones to create a small pond. I was debating if I wanted to do this or if I wanted to just go with a water dish, but after seeing the pond that Mike Taitula set up in his enclosure, I was feeling very inspired to go for it as well. Make sure you check out Mike's enclosure to see the nice pond that inspired me. I didn't buy any rocks for this project, I just used ones that I previously had, so I didn't have many options to work with, but I think it turned out pretty well. You'll notice that I'm not completely blocking off the pond from the rest of the enclosure. This is because I actually want the water to flow freely through the entire enclosure. All of the drainage media is incredibly porous, which will allow for beneficial bacteria to live and thrive, which will aid in keeping the water clean. It also allows me to still be able to drain the entire tank from the one drain. This will also provide much more nutrient-rich water to my plants. With the rocks in place, I'm going to use this Exo Terra biodrain to create a drainage layer for the land portion of the enclosure. And then I'll be using the Exo Terra biodrain mesh to separate the substrate from the drainage layer. I cut the mesh to fit around the pond I created, and then I used some more stones to hold the mesh down. Now we're going to take the new Exo Terra substratum. I'm excited to try this as it's very versatile and is meant to be good for plant growth. I'll be using this as a substrate in the pond, but I'm also going to be adding a layer on top of the mesh, which will benefit my plants. I'm also going to mix some of it into my substrate mix. Exo Terra kindly sent me a few different types of substrate that will go into my mix. I've never used any of these before, so I'm excited to see how they do. Now with everything mixed together, let's add the substrate to the enclosure. I'm going to pile the substrate up higher in the back and have it slope down towards the pond. With the substrate added, we can now move on to the plants and branches. For the plants and branches, I'm actually going to keep it pretty simple. In the past, I've had a habit of filling up enclosures way too much, making for a super crowded enclosure, which I want to avoid this time. The background has one cork branch already, and then I'll be adding a second cork branch along with a manzanita branch and a small branch that I got from outside. For my plants, I chose to use a lemon lime dracaena and a few Pothos cutting, and that's it. Like I said, pretty simple. Once the plants and branches are in, I'm going to add some more accents such as leaf litter and some more moss to add the finishing touches. And here it is, with the background fully done, a little pond made, and the enclosure fully planted. Personally, I think it looks incredible. It turned out so much better than I ever imagined it would. I'm very proud of this enclosure, and I'm sure that my animals are going to love it. However, this enclosure isn't complete. The design of this enclosure is finished, but there are still a few things that need to be done before this enclosure is ready for frogs. Next week's video will show you how I completed this setup and reveal what animals will be living in this enclosure. And there is the enclosure finished for now. So as I mentioned, there is still quite a bit of work that needs to be done with the enclosure to make it ready for my frogs. And I also need to announce the species of frog that I'm going to be keeping in this enclosure to you all. So in order to see me finish setting up these enclosures and reveal the animals that are going to be living inside of them, make sure you don't miss my video next Thursday, so like a week from now. So with all of that said and done, it is time to just go ahead and end the video here. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to Exo Terra for sending me these products and sponsoring this video, and overall just making this entire project possible. This project was so incredibly fun and rewarding, and I'm just so happy with the result of it, so I really cannot thank Exo Terra enough. If you are looking for some products for some bioactive terrarium builds, definitely consider checking out Exo Terra's new Frogs&Co line. There is a ton of awesome products there that I personally have really been enjoying so far. Like I mentioned earlier, the second part to this video will be coming out on Thursday, so if you are not already, make sure you are subscribed to my channel and also hit the notification bell so that you get notified when I post. Also be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. It does mean a lot to me and it really helps me out, so please feel free to do that. And also be sure to check out all of my social media. All of my social media will just be down in the description below, but I would really love to have you guys over there, so be sure to do that. So with all of that said and done, I am just going to go ahead and end my video here. Thank you all so much for watching. I do really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in my video next week.